After the release of Mega Man 10, and honestly kind of before it was even really done being developed, Capcom had apparently decided that Mega Man was born again, but the retro vibe of 9 and 10 wasn't going to last forever. See, it's easy to look back now, 8.5 years later, and say, well, they just gave up on Mega Man, which isn't entirely wrong, exactly. I mean, they did give up on him after shoving every conceivable idea through the pipeline and watching each one of them collapse one by one. Now, Mega Man 11 has just been released on the store shelves, so I thought it'd be good to take a second and break away from the rest of the series to explain just how badly Capcom fucked up Mega Man for the, entire last decade. And it all starts just 8 short weeks after Mega Man 10 was released. There's a long, long history of major game announcements being slightly spoiled by sudden registration of trademarks and web domains by game development companies. For example, earlier this year, CSC Corporate Domains, the company used to register the websites for Pokemon Sun and Moon, registered 2 new URLs, PokemonLet'sGoPikachu.com and PokemonLet'sGoEevee.com. Lo and behold, shortly thereafter, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were officially announced. Likewise, just this week, Nintendo Game Freak and Creatures applied for a trademark for Monpoke, which we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. Well, on April 27th, 2010, it was discovered that Capcom had registered a trademark for the title Mega Man Universe. Strangely, there was no associated trademark for a Rockman universe, so fans started to ponder just what that could mean. I don't know, maybe it'd be a remake of the Rockman World series, who knows. But on July 16th, Capcom released a trailer that harped on some nostalgic beats, and a lot of not-so-nostalgic beats. And Ryu from Street Fighter and Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins? Okay, so that was a bit of a strange reveal trailer. Lots of fans assumed it was just sort of a tongue-in-cheek gag to play off the strange video game commercials of the 90s that looked nothing like the final product, but then came the first gameplay trailers on September 2nd, and what? Alright, I usually try not to interject my personal opinions too much into videos like these, but oh my god, this has to be the ugliest looking Mega Man game I've ever seen. And yes, I'm including the bad box art fat guy and the DOS level select. Holy hell. Not to mention, wasn't the whole goal to stop going back to Mega Man 1 and 2 for endless nostalgia? This game clearly puts the majority of its focus on Mega Man 2 to the point of name-dropping it directly in the trailer, as if the other 70 games in the franchise just never happened. So the idea of the game was essentially an expanded version of the level creator from Mega Man Powered Up. It's entirely possible whole chunks of this were taken from an unfinished build of a Powered Up sequel that got axed when the first one didn't sell very well, but that's just a wild guess and I don't have anything to back that up with, just kind of thinking out loud. Players could build levels and upload them for other players to take on, and they could do so with a number of different characters, including several hideous variations on Mega Man, presumably Ryu and Arthur, and Mega Pen? What? You could even mix and match body parts from multiple characters to create these horrifying monstrosities that make me feel genuinely good about the 3D models from Rockman Strategy. How did you do that? Also, strangely enough, Capcom started asking for fan feedback on what they'd like to see in the game. I mean, it's not too unusual for companies to try and poll for ideas on what the general public wants to see, but Capcom's stance this time was a little more blunt than the usual. After the Tokyo Game Show 2010 showing of the current demo for Mega Man Universe, news just seemed to slow to a crawl. No new announcements were made, no new features were discussed. Of course, this might have had something to do with Keiji Inafune leaving Capcom. Oh boy. Okay, look, we're going to be coming back to this point quite a bit, but the short version is that after having been promoted to the global head of production at Capcom just days before registering the Universe trademark, Inafune felt he was stagnating creatively and didn't think he'd be able to continue to grow if he was stuck at the top. Capcom assured fans that Mega Man Universe was still happening despite Inafune's departure until on March 31st, 2011, they announced that Mega Man Universe had been cancelled. Fans always had kind of mixed feelings on Mega Man Universe. I mean, I wasn't really a big fan of it. I just was happy that any Mega Man game was happening. What people were more concerned about was that Inafune was out at Capcom and any Mega Man game was being cancelled. What we didn't realize at the time was just how severe it was about to become. I mean, as far as we knew, this was just a speed bump on Capcom's road. I mean, it wasn't like they were doing nothing at that point. See, in early May of 2010, shortly after Mega Man Universe was trademarked, Capcom announced a partnership with NeoWiz Games, a South Korean development studio, to produce a title called Rockman Online, with a teaser poster to go along with the announcement. Details were scarce until a trailer for the game released on August 25th, showing a number of classic-era characters interacting, including Mega Man pushing through a crowd to reach Roll, Dr. Light and Dr. Wily, a Yellow Devil, the arrival of the original 6 Robot Masters, and Mega Man fighting Proto Man, not to mention Bass wandering through the wasteland wearing a cloak very similar to his Battle Network counterpart. Unexpectedly, however, were the context-free appearances of Iris, Alia, and Cygnus from the X series, as well as a mysterious new robot that never wound up being identified. A follow-up trailer on November 17th widened the scope of the game, showing characters from both the classic and X series in battle with each other, including a final shot showing Mega Man meeting X for the very first time. Ultimately, it was revealed that the game would be an MMORPG, a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, alluded to be either outside the main canon of the series or possibly after the conclusion of the ZX series. The plot was not very impressive, to say the least. Basically, one day a whole slew of robots started going Maverick, so the United Continent Association orders the production of copies of several old hero robots such as Zero and X. Boy, that worked out great last time! Weirdly enough, Duo from Mega Man 8 and Cinnamon from Mega Man X Command Mission were also revealed as playable character types. Yeah, types. See, as an MMO, there was going to be a decent amount of character customization, but you essentially played a new style Reploid like Axel who fell into one of 4 classes: X, Zero, Duo, or Cinnamon. X types shoot, Zero types slash, Duo types punch, and Cinnamon types heal. In addition, like many MMOs, there were 2 different factions the players could belong to, either the United Continent Association, UCA, or the Ultimate Reploid Association, URA. Yeah, that wasn't going to confuse anybody. At some point during the development, Capcom once again actively sought out fan feedback and hosted a contest to name 2 of the NPCs in the game, with the prize for whoever chose the names that got chosen being a private beta test of Rockman Online. The winner, Amunshan, won with their naming of Phoebe and Deneb? Apparently it's a pun by way of being the brightest star in the Cygnus constellation, but regardless, they were never contacted again about performing the beta test. And as with Mega Man Universe, after the departure of Keiji Inafune and the cancellation of Universe itself, updates started to slow down, with the final blog update for Rockman Online coming in March of 2012. Making things worse, NeoWiz Games announced a massive restructuring in May of that year, laying off almost their entire staff of 300, reducing it to 50. And then the script says to insert a topical Telltale Games reference here. All right, let me see what I can do here. Let's see. Oh, okay, here we go. This is great. Major restructurings and layoffs give employees the walking dread. Get it? Because this shit is pervasive in the video game industry and it terrifies employees. NeoWiz was allegedly considering transferring the development of the game over to its affiliate Game On Studio, and by now the fans were starting to see the writing on the wall. On September 9th, the game's environmental artist Gong Donghua said that the unnamed project he was working on had been dropped. He posted a number of art pieces he had designed for it, and yeah, that definitely looks like Rockman Online. Finally, a full 6 months later, on March 13th, 2013, NeoWiz told online publication RuliWeb that after a series of attempted negotiations with Capcom, Rockman Online was canceled back in November of the previous year. And a mere 9 days later, Capcom told Joystick that discussions on a new Mega Man game had begun. What game this would have been is anyone's guess, because it sure as hell wasn't Mega Man 11. I mean, that one only got started because director Koji Oda discussed the idea with producer Kazuhiro Tsuchiya as development on Resident Evil 7 was wrapping up at the end of 2016. By this point, fans were growing disappointed and even a little depressed and lethargic about Capcom's chances of bringing Mega Man back from the brink. But the Blue Bomber's biggest nail in his coffin was yet to come, and it would create the franchise's biggest feud yet. Amidst the gameplay trailers for Mega Man Universe and the teasers for Rockman Online, it seemed clear that Capcom wasn't putting its full weight behind either project, suggesting to fans that something more significant may be coming down the line. On April 20th, 2010, before either of the 2 games had even been revealed, Capcom announced Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Fate of Two Worlds, bringing 2 Mega Man characters into the fray, newcomer Zero in his X-Series form, and returning from the previous iteration, Tron Bonne. Now, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes came out in 2000, right smack dab in the middle of the very short-lived Legends series when Tron Bonne was at the height of her popularity. Granted, fighting games are well known for bringing fighters forward, even if their only recent fame comes from being in that very fighting game, thank you Super Smash Bros., but with the inclusion of Zero, it may have been reasonable to leave Tron out of it altogether. Then again, there was a Japanese mobile game set in the Legends series just 2 years before, so maybe that would be BOOM! On September 29th, 2010, Capcom announced Mega Man Legends 3 for the Nintendo 3DS. People went fucking ballistic. Fans have been clamoring for a new Legends game for a decade. At long last, Roll and Tron were going to build that rocket and rescue Mega Man from his confinement on Elysium. And on October 10th, Capcom opened the Dev Room, a blog intended to connect people with the developers and get their fan feedback on certain game elements and help decide on character names and designs. Are we sensing a theme yet? Kinda starting to feel like Keiji Inafune doesn't really know what he wants from these games anymore. If it's not retro-themed, then he needs everybody else's help to come up with good ideas. Now, despite Keiji Inafune leaving Capcom, they once again assured everyone that everything is fine, nothing is canceled. The Dev Room contest continued through to June of the next year, and the regular updates let fans breathe a sigh of relief that yes, things were looking okay, even as Mega Man Universe was abruptly canceled in March. Even better, on April 21st, Capcom announced that a playable demo called Mega Man Legends 3 Prototype Version would be released as a launch title for the brand new Nintendo 3DS eShop in May. But on May 12th, when Nintendo delayed the eShop's opening to June 6th, the fans started to get understandably nervous. The date came and went without any sign of the prototype version. See, Capcom had decided the last second to hold off on releasing the demo to improve it before showing it off, deciding that July 18th, for a time the intended release date of the actual completed game, would be the new day for the demo's release. By this point, Chris Hoffman of Nintendo Power is the only journalist who's had their hands on the game and spoke to a number of outlets to help get some kind of information out there. And then, almost inevitably by now, it happened. On July 18th, I sat down on the couch and pulled out my 3DS and went on to the eShop to discover that, prototype version's still not up. Again. Because, according to a post in the dev room, Mega Man Legends 3 had been entirely canceled. That's right, the day the demo was meant to come out, Capcom pulled the plug. Fans were stunned, to put it very, very lightly. And to add insult to injury, Capcom Europe claimed that Capcom as a whole had been monitoring participation in what in a sane universe would have been optional, fan-focused creation contests, and determined that the game should be canceled due to a lack of interest in the game. This is insane. It'd be one thing if Capcom had been upfront and told the fans that it would be keeping an eye on participation, because at least then no one would have been utterly blindsided by the cancellation. But that also assumes that the contest itself was fair, which no, fuck off, Capcom. I have no interest in helping you decide what to make your heroine look like. I just care that she's fun to play as in a game that's fun, looks good, feels good, and sounds good. You canceled the game, or at least claim to have canceled the game, because not enough people participated in glorified polls. Holy shit. The very day of the cancellation, a Facebook page called 100,000 Strong for Bringing Back Mega Man Legends 3 was opened, now known as Get Me Off the Moon Mega Man Legends 3 Revival. On August 19th, the dev room was closed, since with the game being canceled, there was no need for it anymore. And on April 25th of the following year, 100,000 Strong hit its mark and became, in fact, 100,000 Strong. The sting of losing Mega Man Legends 3 never really went away, with fans still desperate for its completion to this day, almost a decade later. In an interview with US Gamer, Keiji Inafune stated that he still was interested in producing the game. In fact, even after having left Capcom and saying that he was never going to work with them again, he had offered to them to allow his new company Comcept to co-produce and finish the game. However, Capcom declined the offer. On August 29th, 2014, a team of developers tied to the 100,000 Strong movement created an 8-bit demake of the prototype version called 2D version Mega Man Legends 3 The Prototype, with the assistance of original team members, composer Makoto Tomozawa and artist Hideki Ishikawa. And if you're interested in learning a bit more about Mega Man Legends 3's development and downfall, you can check out the 24.5-minute documentary released by Get Me Off the Moon on August 8th, 2016. So Keiji Inafune was gone, Mega Man Universe had been canceled, Mega Man Legends 3 had been canceled, Rockman Online had been canceled, and 2012 was starting to look a little, bare bones for the franchise's 25th anniversary. Except... oh my god. What an absolutely pathetic showing out of Capcom. This is astonishingly pitiful. Let's get through this as quickly and painlessly as we can. So on August 15th, 2012, with Universe and Legends 3 already dead and Online about to follow, Capcom announces Rockman Crossover, a mobile title for iOS, with social functionality, because that is what has been really missing from the franchise. It launched on November 29th in Japan, China, and Korea, with a Western release to follow in 2013, but due to the massive, overwhelmingly negative fan feedback, Christian Svensson personally requested Mega Man Crossover's localization to be halted for an indeterminate amount of time. So, Rockman Crossover is a rail shooter, which is pretty much strike one right off the bat. In this auto runner, you just shoot. Charge and shoot through enemies. Then you come to boss battles and you trade turns charging and shooting. And if this looks like literally the least fun version of Mega Man imaginable, congratulations, you win nothing! I mean, this guy isn't even Mega Man, he's Over One, a new genre of robot designed by Dr. Light and Dr. Cossack to combat Dr. Wily, fucking Sigma, all kinds of villains from across the franchise. You have to rescue the other heroes, and I'm not even entirely clear on whether you can play as them or not. I don't know. This is like X7 all over again. Help me. You bother your friends with app notifications to get them to help you. You keep fighting increasingly harder versions of the same bosses again and again. Holy shit, I seriously cannot get over how goddamn lazy this looks. It's so goddamn bad. So very bad, in fact, that the game servers started getting shut down one by one. First in Korea in April 2014, then in China in August of the same year, and finally in Japan on March 31st the year after. So thankfully, by virtue of the servers not existing anymore, making it literally impossible to download or play, it disqualifies itself from the Mega Let's Play. Hooray! You guys hear that? That's the sound of everybody that was sad that Rockman Crossover got shut down. Or maybe it's the sound of everybody who still had any faith left in Mega Man come 2013. You know, the one thing that would probably fix this, though, is announcing another secret cancellation. Yes. Another secret cancellation of a game that we didn't even know existed. Just throw it onto the pile. There you go. Yeah, for real. On April 9th, 2013, it got revealed that for the first half of 2010, in a series of increasingly bizarre business decisions, Capcom got a hold of Armature Studio, recently made up of Retro Studios alums. You know, Retro Studios? They're the ones most famous for taking the existing Metroid franchise and reimagining it as a first-person platform shooter. See, Capcom, on the other hand, hired them to take the existing Mega Man franchise and reimagine it as a first-person platform. Oh no! They even hired a man named Adi Kranov. If you're not familiar with his name, you are undoubtedly at least familiar with his work. See, he had been climbing the comic ladder after suddenly becoming employed by Marvel and ended up working with Warren Ellis to illustrate the 2005 Extremis arc for an at-the-time C-list Marvel hero you may have heard of named Iron Man. The series was an instant hit and to this day remains one of the defining moments in Iron Man's entire comic history. It was so massive of a win that Jon Favreau tagged him and two others to design the suits to be used in his upcoming adaptation, 2008's Iron Man. So Capcom grabbed the guy who helped kickstart the Marvel Cinematic Universe to redesign X in the second attempt to reboot the X series, and the end result was this. I mean, yeah, it's not a bad design by any means, it's just not really Mega Man. This kind of reminds me of Bomberman Zero in like all the worst ways. I can see Iron Man fighting this, but not Sigma. Anyway, the idea was to create a trilogy, and they were using the project name Maverick Hunter. Not to be confused with the last reboot of the X series called Maverick Hunter. Awesome. The first two games are going to focus on X, but the third would have featured Zero in the lead role, forced to take down an X that has gained so much knowledge and skill that he has essentially become a mad god. So I guess this was also going to be a Mega Man Zero reboot too? Well, either way, after less than 6 months of some of the highest caliber talent on the planet working on this game in secret, producing a playable prototype that internally was, okay, a little bit polarizing, but people did like it within Capcom, it was abruptly canceled and swept under the rug, only to be mysteriously brought back out in some weird effort to tell the fans, hey, it could be worse. We could have told you we canceled the game before any of the rest of this even got started. So that's 4 canceled games now. Okay, 3.5, depending on how you count Rockman Crossover, but either way, all of this seems to gravitate around the moment Keiji Inafune left Capcom. Oh, Inaf King, how the mighty have really squandered their reputation and good name in a desperate struggle to reclaim the good old days. Even while Mega Man 10 was still in development, he was caught moaning at the Dead Rising 2 party at 2009's Tokyo Game Show, declaring the Japanese industry dead based on the country's lackluster output at the event. Despite, or perhaps as a direct result of, having to do some PR spin to fix that little mess, Capcom named Keiji Inafune the global head of production on April 22nd, 2010, which he didn't seem to love terribly much since a mere 6 months later, he was leaving Capcom altogether. While he did assure people that it was an amicable split, he did state rather sternly that he was unlikely to work together with Capcom on projects again, instead preferring to focus on his own creative endeavors. That winter would turn out to be rather fruitful for Inafune, founding Comcept on December 15th and Intercept the following month. For a few years, he laid low until August 31st, 2013, when he announced a Kickstarter for a game that bore more than a passing resemblance to the jump-and-shoot man he'd been attached to for 23 years, Mighty No. 9. At this point, Mega Man fans were ravenous for anything that even vaguely looked like Mega Man, as evidenced by the wildly successful campaign for Shovel Knight, an indie title that merged elements of Mega Man along with DuckTales, The Adventure of Link, and Castlevania, and seemed to be the progenitor of the revival of retro-styled indie games. After only 2 days, Mighty No. 9 reached its fundraising goal of $900,000 and continued to climb, surpassing $4 million split between the Kickstarter campaign and PayPal donations by the end of September. I'm not going to go into too much detail on Mighty No. 9 because I actually already made 2 different videos on that and its follow-up, which, spoiler, is going to come up briefly in this video. If you want to see my in-depth analysis over both of those titles, you can check out my brief history and debrief history of Comcept, which should be like in the description down here, or maybe like there's a link, like a little eye bubble, like there, maybe? Something like that. Unless you're watching on like a console, and in that case, YouTube app just kind of hates you. Anyway, in October 2013, Inafune and Comcept had their funds and got to work on what was at the time being pitched as a very hand-drawn style of animation that looked pretty cool, and updated the backers, albeit less and less as the months dragged on, including a significant amount of, you guessed it, requests for fan feedback for design decisions and characters. Until rather abruptly, on the 4th of July 2015, Inafune announced 2 more Kickstarters, why not, for 2 different variants on a concept called Red Ash. The first was a miniseries called Red Ash Magicada, which had a base goal of $150,000 to produce a 5-minute short, with stretch goals going all the way up to $2.5 million for 8 episodes and a movie. They raised $162,882. What a great series. Oh, you haven't seen it? Yeah, it got shown at the Tokyo Anime Award Festival on March 11th, 2017 as Red Ash Gear World, and that's the last anyone's really heard of it. There are crunchy versions of it around the internet, though, and it does seem like they decided to put in more than just 5 minutes, so yay? If I had to venture a guess, I'm thinking the reason they only got 1 episode's worth of funding came down to the second Kickstarter for a game called Red Ash: The Indelible Legend, which is so blatantly based on the concept from Mega Man Legends that if anybody but Keiji Inafune was fronting it, Capcom would have started making a few phone calls. See, The Indelible Legend was trying to raise $800,000, which was a bit of a big ask, considering Comcept had still yet to deliver on their previous campaign for Mighty No. 9. It was becoming quite obvious over the following month that The Indelible Legend wasn't going to reach its goal, so Comcept started shopping for investors, ultimately landing on the Chinese company Fuse Entertainment. Fuse just straight up put in $800,000. The Kickstarter was now functionally useless, so people smarter than myself just started bailing to ensure their money wasn't being taken for nothing, and the Kickstarter ended not funded at only $520,000. Now, Mighty No. 9 was ultimately released on June 21st, 2016 on a number of home consoles, but the handheld versions were still nowhere to be seen. What I did not know at the time, and frankly 2 years later there's still not a lot to go off of here, was that Fuse Entertainment unveiled on May 10th, just before the game came out, that they were releasing their own game console in China, the Tomahawk F1. And among the games planned for the release on this new console, Mighty No. 9 and Red Ash: The Indelible Legend. June 1st, the Tomahawk F1 shipped, and I literally can't find any information that extends past that. If anybody's watching this in or near China, hit me up in the comments. I actually would really love to know what's going on with the F1 right now. Still struggling, for reasons I'm about to hypothesize on in a moment, Comcept cannot seem to finish Red Ash, cannot seem to finish Mighty No. 9 for handhelds, and can barely even ship physical rewards for their first Kickstarter that ended 4 years ago. And on June 13th, 2017, sells itself to Level 5, rebranding itself as Level 5 Comcept. So back in 2016, at the end of my debrief history of Comcept, I decided to take a bit of a swing at guessing why all this stuff was so weird in the first place in dealing with Mighty No. 9 and Red Ash. And I think 2 years later, it'd be healthy to take a second attempt at it, correct my mistakes from then, from those naive days, and see if I can come up with a more nuanced and factually based idea for what happened back then. I was 100% right with my initial guess, except it was much worse than it actually seemed at the time. Honest to God, as far as I can tell, the last 2 years have only bolstered my initial theory, so for those who haven't heard it yet, here we go, with a couple updates. Comcept was struggling to make ends meet, so they made a Kickstarter to fund Mighty No. 9, helping them stay afloat in 2013. Development was taking forever and not progressing fast enough, and the money was running out, so in 2015, Inafune played off everyone's nostalgia for the Legends series and started 2 more Kickstarters he assumed would sell just as well as Mighty No. 9, so that should they be able to successfully raise the money, they could finish funding Mighty No. 9 with the Red Ash money, then funnel the extra Mighty No. 9 sales profits back into Red Ash to complete that. Honestly, from an outside perspective, that sounds like an accusation of fraud, and that is a serious offense and shouldn't be suggested lightly, which is why I'm not suggesting it lightly. I am honestly willing to believe Comcept may have been trying to defraud people out of almost $1 million on the internal promise that it would work itself out without anyone noticing. Except the Indelible Legend was flat out not going to get its money because not everybody is a sucker like me. So they shopped around and got Fuse Entertainment to give them $800,000 in exchange for ensuring both games would end up on the Tomahawk F1. But it still isn't enough because Mighty No. 9 wound up being a total disaster that sold like shit, so they couldn't fund the Indelible Legend because no one was buying Mighty No. 9. And Recore, co-developed by Armature Studio, what do you know, was also doing not that great, so the Red Ash animation got quietly shoved to the side after a short film festival. Both the Red Ash game and the handheld Mighty No. 9 were silently canceled without an official release to this day, and the physical rewards for Mighty No. 9 backers were left to an entirely different company to shell out several years later. Now, Mega Man 11 has been receiving praise so glowing it's practically radioactive, which is great because, honestly, after all of this shit with Mighty No. 9, I started to develop a really heavy, cautious optimism in general for this kind of thing. So after 3 years of a shakedown from Comcept and Mighty No. 9 and Red Ash and all of that garbage, it is nice to see that Mega Man 11 seems to be the real deal. But honestly, was there anything good happening to Mega Man around 2010? Well, so long as anyone but Capcom was involved, yeah. Mega Man was added to the Smash Bros. Roster on June 11th, 2013, and the Archie comics were going well for a while. Yeah, that's kind of an awkward bit too. See, for 4 years, Archie Comics had a series of Mega Man comics that look honestly fucking amazing, and they were spearheaded by two of the main people behind the equally fantastic Sonic Archie comics. They started publication in May 2011 and ran 55 issues and even had 2 crossover events, Worlds Collide in 2013, crossing over with Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic Universe, and Worlds Unite in 2015, crossing over with them again, as well as Sonic Boom and bringing in a wealth of other Capcom characters, including X. However, only 3 issues after Worlds Unite, the comic was put on indefinite hiatus that it still hasn't returned from. Apparently, the comic wasn't meeting sales quotas and was on the brink of cancellation before Worlds Collide briefly saved it. Unfortunately, around the time of the crossover event, Sega itself was dealing with the Ken Penders situation, which is absolutely a topic for another day. And none of this even includes Mega Man Fully Charged, whose earliest indications were that it was going to be some flimsy cash grab on the 30th anniversary of the series, but actually seems to be turning out really good so far. The last 8 years have been a terrible, horrible, chaotic, murky, mismanaged, devastating, depressing mess for the Blue Bomber. Starting with everything going wrong possible between 2010 and 2013 with all of Capcom's best laid plans, and ending with Keiji Inafune moving on to worse projects elsewhere and every other company under the sun treating Mega Man better than his own home team. But there might still be a bright future left over. If Mega Man 11 can do it, it's possible that the Blue Bomber could come back from the brink. And we're going to find that out next time.
Get on it. Get up. Once again, back is the incredible Mega Man. Refuse to lose. Get on it. Get up. Once again, back is the incredible Mega Man.